Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. And today we are talking about last night's 2-1 victory over Charlotte. 4 games in a row without Messi, 4 games in a row without Suarez, 4 games in a row without Matias Rojas, and yet 4 victories in a row. Inter Miami has gone on the road. They've gone up against some of the best teams in the league. They've gone up against some of the best defenses in the league. They have always found a way to win, and it is awesome. It is fun. I am joined by my co-host, Saur. As always, I'm Scotty. Saur, I'm sorry we missed you yesterday. We appreciate you making the cameo on recording, but how are you feeling, man?
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed yesterday's episode as well. I hope it worked out well for everyone, including the listeners. But I'm glad to be back and happy July 4th, everyone.
Yeah, July 4th, and Skrill is absolutely right. It's amazing that we haven't started guessing 2-1 for every game. It's a very American holiday. I'm still rooting for Greg Berhalter to get fired, but that hasn't happened yet, and it's not going to happen today because that would probably be un-American. Let's get into Inter Miami stuff. The Olympic rosters were due yesterday, I believe, for Olympic soccer, and we found out Federico Redondo is alternate for Argentina. So he's going to go to Paris, probably isn't going to play. He's an injury substitute, but he will be with the team. Going to be an awesome experience for him, but he will be away from Inter Miami for like 3 weeks. Not every country has actually published their rosters yet. They just had to submit them to the Olympic Committee. So we're not exactly sure. I'm imagining that Benjamin Kramaski is not going to get called up to the Olympics for the U.S. Olympic team because they decided to go get a overage midfielder, which was very surprising. But it makes me think it's unlikely that Kramaski is going to get the call for the 18. He may be an alternate, so we may still lose him. And then I think Diego Gomez going for Paraguay is a given. Israel Boatwright, another player that I think is likely to go with the Dominican Republic, but not a huge impact. Copa America updates. Paraguay is done. I expect Matias Rojas to be with the team on Saturday night. He played about 5 minutes for Paraguay in their first game, and I don't think he played again. Suarez and Messi continuing on, and both teams look very good. They both play this weekend, and so if they win, they'll advance and then probably be gone for quite some time because then even if they don't win the next game, they'll play in the third place game. But if they do lose in this quarterfinal round, then I assume both of them or whichever one would be back for Inter Miami's following game against Toronto on the 17th. Anything about either of those talking points?
Now, Uruguay is looking good, so I expect them to advance. But aren't they playing Brazil?
They do play Brazil, but Brazil hasn't looked very good.
Yeah, so I expect Uruguay to actually surprise everybody. We'll see where that pans out. But yeah, I mean, the Olympic roster, more or less expected. Benjamin Kramaski going as an alternate, that's kind of surprising given that he's been playing decent and he obviously scored yesterday, which was great for us. And also Redondo going as an alternate, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's going to be a great experience for him, but Inter Miami losing him again, it feels like his time at Inter Miami has been so stop and start. Wasn't available this past game either because seems like he was a little bit shaky with his fitness, so they decided to keep him out. I don't know if injury is going to be an issue with him going forward, but I hope he gets back into shape very quickly because I want to see him get some consistent game time with Inter Miami and integrated into the team as soon as possible. But yeah, other than that, let's get straight into the game, man.
Yeah, just a correction. The Copa Americas over the next 4 days. Argentina plays Ecuador tonight at 9 Eastern. And then the Venezuela-Canada game tomorrow. Brazil and Uruguay and Colombia and Panama both play on Saturday. So over the next couple of days, that's happening. Anything else about around Inter Miami World? I don't know if you saw the third kits. I expect them to get released July 16th. So that blue kit that we've seen with the stripes, I don't feel bad about them at all. I'm excited for them.
Yeah.
I will definitely be getting one. I think I'm going to get an Ian Frey because I don't have an Ian Frey kit, and he's my favorite player. But if you guys have any suggestions, throw that in the comment section. Should we just get into it? 2-1 victory. Inter Miami beats Charlotte. We didn't get your thoughts on the starting 11, so let's do that now. And I believe we got this right. We had to update the graphic a little bit, but this looks right. What were your thoughts when you saw this starting 11 and when you realize that we don't have Yannick Bright in the midfield.
Wasn't this the starting 11 that I went with? Maybe a couple of changes in the midfield, but I think this was very close to what I had picked. I knew Yannick Bright was not going to start because Tata Martino tends to favor his, first choice midfielders or the senior midfielders, to say the least. And I fully expected something very similar to be on the pitch, and that was the case. We saw very quickly that that was wrong, and the lineup should have been slightly different. We should have picked Yannick Bright from the get-go. The first half was a bit of a grind. We didn't play that well in the first half. We saw a lot of the same issues that we've been seeing this past these couple of months now. And yeah, without number 6 in there to hold that midfield, it just seems there's too much space for the other team to exploit, and that's exactly what happened. I thought we would perform a little bit better with this lineup. On paper, it looks a lot better than and should be able to compete with the Charlotte team, but it didn't work in the first half. We were lucky to get a goal to even start off the game because we went ahead, which was surprising. But the second half, it was a lot better, seemed a lot more controlled, and we all know why. Great on Tata Martino for figuring out that we needed a defensive midfielder and solving the issue very quickly in the first half. Bold move to take off Christoph and put in Sergio Busquets, but I'm glad he did it.
Yeah, so let's get into the action. As you said, they came out in a surprising. By the way, for the lineup, the only surprise for me, I think, was Redondo just not being on the bench at all.
Yeah.
But apparently he is fine and healthy. They talked to Tata Martino after the game, and he said that it was just a scheduled day of rest. So Redondo should be good for Saturday night. Getting into the first half, I think Charlotte came out really aggressive, really pressing, trying to surprise Inter Miami and get us on the back foot, and it really worked. Not at all what I was expecting from them. And they came out and really tried to make their mark on the game and control what they could control. And that was making it really difficult for Inter Miami to progress the ball through the midfield into the attack, turn the ball over frequently, and then use their athleticism going forward. I was really impressed with what they did, honestly. They were a lot better than I was expecting, especially in the front line and especially in the back line. So I do want to give them kudos. They get their first big moment in the 27th minute. Ajimang did a good job to get the ball forward, and then he sort of bodies up and gets around Christoph, puts the ball on goal, but Drake Callender makes a really nice save there, falling to his right, getting that hand down and deflecting it. That was the big one, but they did have a couple other chances, so I don't want to make it seem like it was just the one. But then suddenly Inter Miami swings everything in the 30th minute. Cello plays a nice switch to Kramaski across the field. Kramaski plays it forward to Jordi Alba, who's overlapping, and then Alba, characteristically as he does, puts the ball not to the front runner, but to the second runner, and that was Robert Taylor in this case, who taps it in for a goal. Inter Miami goes up 1-0 in a way that felt undeserved. Certainly, Charlotte was the better team in those first 30 minutes. Inter Miami really, they had a couple opportunities where they got forward, didn't create incredible goal scoring chances, but you could tell there was something in transition if they could get the ball to that front three, especially Julian Gressel. But up until this point, it was Charlotte's game, really. And it was something where you could tell we needed to make changes in the second half if we were going to be competitive. And yet we go out and score the first goal, and it feels like, man, this team, even when they're not playing well, even when they're not set up to succeed, even when they have the wrong personnel, even when they didn't expect what Charlotte was bringing to them, they still find a way to just get the result that they need, and they go up 1-0 in the 30th minute.
Yeah, I think my first impressions from that Charlotte attack was I wasn't too surprised about their build-up and how they were building it up. They utilized their wings, they utilized their striker really, really well. This was possibly the first time that a out-and-out number 9 gave this backline a lot of trouble. I think this was the first game where I would say we struggled to contain Ajimang. He was really good, very strong, proper number 9, played all the forward movements as he should, and the team was relying on him to get into good positions, but also getting the ball out into wide spaces from where they were very dangerous. So we discussed this in the pregame show that they're going to use the wide channels to create. But what did surprise me about Charlotte was the pace of their attacks. They were a lot faster in their build-up. I don't think they were necessarily pressing as high. They were in a mid-block and trying to get Inter Miami to turn over, and this midfield is quite turnover prone. We have two in there who are not necessarily the best at keeping the ball. Kremaski and Gomez, not the best ball holders, so it was evident that we weren't winning the midfield battle, but Charlotte was really hurting us with the pace with which they were playing in terms of their quick passes, getting the ball up high very quickly. And they were playing good football, and they deserved to be at least level during the half, which, I think 1-1 was slightly flattering to Inter Miami. But Inter Miami always has that one player who turns up. Drake Calendar, fantastic save to keep us in the game from the start. And then I think we also discussed this in the preseason that the way to beat this Charlotte backline is to move the ball quickly and to make sure you mess up their organized defense. And that's exactly how we built the goal. We took the ball out to Wigan, which was the best way to try and create an attack because the wing play was what we were actually doing really well. Through the middle, we were quite chaotic, but on the wings, we were being threatening. Him turning the ball all the way to Kremaski on the other side, again, switching the play. Kremaski with a great ball to Alba. Alba does exactly what he does all the time in that position. And Robert Taylor, perfectly positioned at that time. Great play, great goal, but against the run of play. So lucky to be ahead, but I think the goal constructed was the blueprint of how to beat this Charlotte defense.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They were in control of the game, and it was because we didn't have the midfield. I talked about this a little bit in the pregame show, where we have not seen Kremaski and Diego Gomez in the midfield together successfully a lot since they came. Last season, we saw it twice, and in both games, we really struggled in the midfield to control the game. I don't know if those two can really play that well together. It's a small sample size. This was the first game that they both started because Kremaski came back after Diego Gomez's injury, and then on Saturday night in Nashville, Gomez was playing higher up the field. So this was the first time we've seen them together in the midfield, but they could not control the midfield, and they could not help us progress the ball through the midfield. We were really relying on Busquets, and this will lead to the halftime changes that we'll talk about. But Inter Miami takes a 1-0 lead. I do feel like there's a sort of sense of, wow, we really might have like destiny on our side. And in the 35th minute, though, Charlotte didn't stop. Ajimang had another really good opportunity, hits the post, and then in the 41st minute, they do get the equalizer. Ajimang bodied off Aviles for sort of a throw-in jump ball type, and then he has just a pace to get to Christoph, taps the ball past him. Christoph is in no man's land at that point, and he gets the ball into the box and a shot off before Jordi Alba is able to try and make a rescue play. Drake Calendar does get a hand to it, but unable to save it, and so the goal equalizes. Charlotte 1, Inter Miami 1.
Man, what was Aviles doing there? that was poor play from him. Yeah, he should have been a little bit stronger, but his positioning was all over the place. And as I mentioned, this was the first time that this backline, the centre-back partnership, has really suffered against a full number 9. And I'll be honest, Adjaman, if he was a little bit more clinical, would have really embarrassed this backline if he could. Got away with one, but Aviles had to do better for that particular goal. Should have been a lot stronger and should have been better positioned. He was completely wrong-sided, and also he put himself in the wrong position. It wasn't even like he was in the right place. He was behind Ajimang, and then he went forward, misread the ball, and it just left tons of space in behind for Ajimang to run into. And yeah.
Did you think it was a foul on Ajimang? Because they looked at it for quite some time.
For Ajimang or on Aviles?
Ajimang, because they looked at it on VAR for quite some time to see if they thought it was, a body check.
A foul on Aviles by Ajimang. I don't think it was a foul. I think it was, he should have been stronger. He just should have been stronger. He was already in a poor spot, and I think he made the most of going to the ground as soon as possible because he knew he was beat.
Yeah, a tough play from Aviles. I think even worse from Christoph, who just got beat for pace and then was out of position. And he has to be smarter there to know, like, okay, if I'm not going to get to this ball, I need to set up so that I can defend the next touch. Yeah, and you're also right. Ajimang, he had the shot saved, but he had two other chances in this game. He could have had 2 or 3 goals easily. But I will say, I thought Inter Miami really responded well to giving up a goal. I felt, that goal was in the 41st minute. The next 10 minutes of the first half, they really played well. Diego Gomez got a shot off on goal about a minute after that goal. And then Jordi Alba with the golden opportunity in the in stoppage time of the first half. And just couldn't put it on target, and he fell over. He couldn't even believe it that it wasn't on target. But anything else from that first half that sort of stood out for you?
This Inter Miami team is just finding ways to win, even when we're not 100%. We're just finding ways to compete and to make sure we're in the game. Wasn't the best half of football, which is understandable. The Charlotte team is by no means a pushover. And I don't think I expected like an easy game from this, and they have a really good defense. So I wasn't surprised that we struggled, and it was a little bit of a painful watch compared to how prolific Inter Miami's actually been in the last few games and throughout the season. So it was what it was. It was a difficult game and you could see our players struggling to take control of it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Going to the second half, we made the subs. We made the change. And I appreciate Tata Martino being very aggressive with the sub, because you could tell in that first half, aside from those last 10 minutes, we were really struggling. Ajimang was having a field day. He would have scored 2 or 3 goals if we didn't make the changes. We do bring Yannick Bright onto the field. Sergei Christoph comes off. Sergio Busquets goes to the back line, like we've seen him play the last couple games. So it wasn't just a random tactic. It was something we've seen over the last couple games that we feel solid about. And then, of course, Yannick Bright in the midfield, who is, I feel like the two of us deserve some plaudits for how early we said this guy was going to be a difference maker. Into the second half, there was a moment in the 63rd minute that Inter Miami almost scored. Leo Campana with a really nice ball to the back post, and Julian Gressel is there. He just can't collect it. But if he can, I think he got caught between, should I shoot first touch or should I collect it? And he got caught halfway. Yeah, he got caught halfway, and he ended up making a bad touch and then loses the opportunity. But there was a moment there where we could have scored. And then in the 73rd minute, there was a corner. The ball bounces around in the box, and then Diego Gomez finally gets a foot to it, puts it hard shot on goal, but Kalina makes a save. Not sure you would call that a save, but his body was in the way. And then finally we get the breakthrough in the 86th minute. Jordi Alba in the middle of the field switches the ball long to Julian Gressel, who puts in that final cross into Benjamin Kremaski for the tap, and Kremaski making a really nice run. And Inter Miami gets the 2-1 lead. Anything else from that second half? Any other big notes? I mean, Ajimang got a red card, but I feel like most of these other moments we'll talk about throughout the rest of the episode.
Yeah, and I'm sure I want to see if you have a similar understanding. So in this game specifically, this was very, very evident to me that everything was happening on the wings. Every single positive play that was coming from Inter Miami was through the wings. Both our goals came from the wings. The Gressel opportunity that you mentioned was also from the wings. Gomez one was I believe, off a corner. So everything was happening from the wide channels. And do you think ever since, I mean, I'd love to see the stats in this, but since Messi's been out of this team, I feel like our best opportunities are through those wide flanks rather than through the center. I don't think we've been as creative through the center as we have been on those wide areas. And it'll be interesting to compare the post-Messi / pre-Messi or with Messi / without Messi statistics to see where our build-up usually is or what our best attacking opportunities are. Because to me, it feels like we attack a lot on the flanks when Messi's not there, and that's our best opportunity to score.
Well, I think, to be fair, Lionel Messi is so good centrally that when you take him off the field, you're going to naturally see more movement down the wings. Mm-hmm. And so I think probably maybe it's just you expect it because you see Messi so much, but that when you lose Messi, of course, you're not going to be as talented up the middle of the field. Should we talk about Charlotte for a few minutes and just get it out of the way? They were a lot more aggressive, especially in terms of pressing, especially in terms of creating turnovers in the midfield. And they played a lot higher up the pitch than I was expecting. they are a team that gives up a lot of possession. They are a team that's comfortable playing without the ball. And that's not what their game plan was. They wanted to get on the ball. They wanted to make sure that they could make the game happen, and they weren't just letting Inter Miami do what it wanted to do. And I thought that proved really good. It proved really well. We did talk about in the pregame show how about that back line and how good they are and the defense, and I thought they lived up to it. I thought they were really impressive. And you mentioned at the center backs pairing, they are really good together. And I think I didn't give them enough credit. I think they're really good individually too.
Yeah.
That's an excellent center back pairing. And then Ajimang, who maybe we should start with, was way better than I was expecting. Their wingers were creative and athletic, but Ajimang was like the baller for them. Getting the ball to him up the field was such a difference-making play for them. And it happened so many times, and he was so dangerous, and he got so many opportunities that he created himself. His teammates created for him. We were really struggling with Ajimang, especially in that first half. And he was a lot better than I thought he would be.
Yeah, Ajuman, I've heard a lot from Charlotte fans about how good he actually is. And this game, he lived up to that. He was a menace up front, especially in the first 50 minutes or 60 minutes. Once Bright got a hold of him, he got very frustrated. And obviously that led to the red card. So silly of him, because otherwise he was having a fantastic game. And I know he didn't necessarily score the winner and Charlotte lost that game, but he could have easily been one of the best players on that pitch if he hadn't got sent off. A menace all around, making really good runs. Even that goal that he scored was a strong, powerful run. He had a lot to do. The finish was really, really composed, fantastic. And yeah, I thought he was the better striker on the day compared to both teams. I think he played better than Campana did. But he was also getting service, which was actually really commendable because I didn't think Charlotte would be able to create as much as they actually did. Their XG was the same as ours, so that's saying something.
Yeah, and I see some Campana hate in the chat. I just want to put this out there. Ajimang, who was really, really good in that first half, until he scored that goal, he had the same number of goals on the season as Leo Campana. So let's just relax. We saw how great Ajimang was. And then we also saw in the second half, he really struggled because we brought on Yannick Bright. And we will talk about that and that major change with Busquets in the back line in a little bit. But one of the things that we've prided on, or we've given a lot of credit to this defense, is that we don't give up a lot of opportunities to opposing number nines. We've been very good, especially against those big physical number nines. And this was not the case. And that was part of the reason why I was comfortable with Aviles and Christoph, because they've been a part of why we've been so good against those big number nines. Why do you think he was able to be so successful against us when we've been very good at defending and shutting down those big number nines and so far this season?
It's hard to point a finger at it, but my intuition is that the balls coming into him were very direct. Charlotte was bypassing the midfield a lot of the times. Malanda had a fair few balls that were line breaking in from the middle of from the back line, and he had some really good distribution as well. And Charlotte wasn't afraid to go long. Charlotte wasn't afraid to not play through the middle, and bypassing that midfield gave them that extra speed of putting the ball forward. And yeah, I just think Ajuman had a really good game, man. I don't know what the comparison would be like with players like Christian Benteke and stuff, but I like to see who was playing in our back line when we went up against Christian Benteke and Lewis Morgan, maybe. I think it was Freire at that time and not Christoph. But on paper, we should have done well against him, but he just had a really good game. And all the balls he collected really well. He was powerful, strong, composed. Didn't finish all of his chances, which is, I think, the biggest criticism, as Peaches pointed out here. But other than that, I think he just had a really, really good game. And Aviles and Christoph were a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Aviles and Christoph had a particularly good game. I also think that a lot of those number nines we've talked about don't have the athleticism that Ajimang had. And a lot of his chances were coming from the ball put in front of him, as you mentioned, very direct balls, not crosses where he could get his head on, not balls in where he had to use his physicality to create opportunities, although he did do that once. But balls that he was able to get, put forward in front of him that he could use his pace to then body the defender with his athleticism. And then, of course, the goal scorer, he just got to a ball first that Kristoff did not think he was going to lose. And then he created the goal scoring opportunity. So I think it was more about his pace. I don't know if this is a lesson that we can take away for future when Christian Benteke comes back, or, these type of players. But the pace I did think hurt, and it was a lot better in the second half. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the back line. Andrew Privet and Adelson Malanda, who, you talked about more glowingly than I did, and I want to give you credit for that because they were really, really good. Our front line, anytime we tried to do anything centrally, we were shut down. That was both Campana, that was also Robert Taylor, that was also, aside from the last moment of the game, Kremaski and not of the game, but our final goal, Kremaski and Diego Gomez, they couldn't do anything centrally either because there was this brick wall of two defenders that were really, really good, very physical, very athletic. I thought they were really excellent in that game.
So on average, Sergio Busquets has about 75 passes per game. Do you want to guess how many passes Malanda had?
75.
He had 79 passes as a center back and an 86% pass accuracy and 11 long balls. So there was definitely that one tactic that they were using of putting the long balls in from Malanda into Ajimang. Great player, dude. I would definitely take him on our team. He's fantastic. And from what I've heard, he's not going to be on this Charlotte roster for long because he's potentially going to end up playing in somewhere in Europe. And very promising player, very young, but organizes their defense really well. I thought Privet was understated, but had a really good role in maintaining that shape of their backline. And it wasn't easy for us by any means, but credit to the Inter Miami forward line for actually scoring two past this really good defense because we moved them around quite a lot. And one thing I've noticed over the last couple of weeks, whenever we're playing with that front five, we have a lot of movement in front of us. So it's not static by any means. Robert Taylor had no business to be central in that first goal when that first goal was scored. Of course, Jordi Alba was in his position and he had the wits to take up a good position in the middle. So that being said, they move around a lot, they interchange a lot, and that interchangeability creates a little bit of confusion in the opposition backline. And that's exactly how we created a lot of our opportunities. So credit to Tata for keeping our front five quite fluid, and it's not as rigid as some players or some coaches prefer it to be, which I really like to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else about Charlotte? I know that at the end of the game, you could tell on Dean Smith's face that he could not believe that his team wasn't going to get 3 points. And credit to Inter Miami for, making the plays happen when they needed to and being clinical when they got their opportunities. It definitely feels like a game Charlotte is going to walk away from feeling like, oh my God, how did we not get 3 points from that one? And not even 3 points, but didn't even get 1 point. But that is what happens when you play the best teams. This game, in my head, was built up to be really a test for Inter Miami because Charlotte is incredible at home, one of the best teams in the league at home. Inter Miami, one of the best teams in the league on the road. Charlotte, one of the best defensive teams in the league. Inter Miami, one of the best, is the best offensive team, but maybe downgrade that to one of the best offensive teams when you don't have Messi and Suarez. And yet, Inter Miami still able to create offense, still able to go on the road. They were the team that got the result that they wanted, the result that they needed. And Charlotte goes home with their, sad faces and frustration. Who do you give credit to for the ability for us to create offense, even against a defense that we just gave plaudits to for being really good and really solid, a goalkeeper that didn't have a ton to do in this game, but is really good. And yet Inter Miami still able to create offense and score a couple goals in this game.
It's just the talent that we have in this team. Like every single player contributes like every other game. If you look at it, Robert Taylor hadn't scored a goal in, I think, 3 or 4 games. And here he is in the right position, scoring that goal. Kremaski as well. They show up at the right time. I think the best part is the goals are distributed across that front line. There's not one single player who's dominating the number of goals being scored by this Inter Miami team. Obviously, that was the case when Luis Suarez was in and when Messi was in. A lot of our output came through them, but in the absence of those players, everyone has picked up the slack. And credit to the players for stepping up when it's necessary. And it just seems like everyone is playing together and for the team rather than trying to be the hero and trying to get as many goals as one can. Campana, very unselfish. I know there's been a little bit of criticism in the chat for him. I agree he didn't have the best games at all, but he has been super unselfish in a lot of these games. His ball into Gressel, which he should have controlled a lot better, could have potentially, or should have ended up in an assist. And he ends up in positions that he, as a number 9, shouldn't necessarily be in. But he's good at passing as well. He's good at crossing the ball. So he trusts someone else to take up that space. So that interchangeability, that trust between those players is really, really good, and it's helpful for Inter Miami to score that many goals in the absence of their most prolific goal scorers.
Yeah, I just the 3 best defenses in the league are LAFC, who we haven't played, Charlotte, who we just scored 2 on at their place and won, and Columbus, who again we just played, scored 2 goals on them, won the game. And by the way, Nashville, who by the whole season standard isn't one of the best teams in the league defensively, but over the last 8 to 10 games has been phenomenal and probably been the best defensive team over the last couple months since Walker Zimmerman returned to their lineup. 3 back-to-back games against incredible defenses, and Inter Miami just finds a way to create offenses, whether it's off set pieces, whether it's in transition, whether it's in the run of play, whether it's through generated offense, because we have really talented players. And you're right, it's coming from all different parts. Gressel has been consistently good, but Robert Taylor, Ian Frey, Jordi Alba, Leo Campana, it just feels like there's so many ways for this team to score right now. And it's really just a matter of, can we get it right defensively so that we can win a game 2-1 instead of losing a game 3-2? Which leads me to the substitution. At halftime, Tata Martino very aggressively, maybe uncharacteristically aggressively, makes the decision, take off Christoph, put Busquets in the back line, and put Yannick Bright into the midfield, sub him on. And of course, it absolutely changed the game. There's a couple reasons, and I want to get your opinion on this, but what do you think was the biggest reason? And I felt like it was night and day between the first half and the second half, but what did you think when you saw that substitution? What did you think when you saw the team play in that new setup?
I think the biggest reason for that substitution was the fact that our midfield did not have any control. We were really struggling to try and make something happen in that midfield. Apologies, my internet might be a little bit bugged here, but for me, I think by putting Bright in, Tata Martino wanted to take control of that midfield and wanted to shore up the defense a little bit. He saw that we were getting bullied by the front line, and given how well Bright has played over the last couple of games, the last few games, in fact, having him on just allows some of our other players to play a little more freely offensively. And that's where Inter Miami actually struggled in this game from the midfield to try and create anything from the midfield was very difficult in this particular game. And I think by putting Bright on, the idea was, okay, we're going to shore up the defense and let the midfield be a little bit more creative in going forward. Otherwise, I think Kramaski and Gomez and Busquets always have to constantly think about, there's nobody behind us to protect us, so we need to get back as soon as possible. And that just messes up the entire creative equation.
Let me get your opinion on this, because this is what I thought was most impactful. And yes, Yannick Bright does do those things, but I actually thought putting Busquets on the back line was more impactful, because it felt like for much of the first half, we really struggled to just sit on the ball, control possession. And when Sergio Busquets is in the midfield, it's a lot easier to sort of block him out, cut out the passing lanes, make him unavailable. And yes, he's very good at finding spaces anyways, but when he's on the back line, you can always find him. He's always available. You're never going to lose the ball. And so once he goes back there, every time we got the ball, it felt like it was funneled to Sergio Busquets before it was funneled back to other players. And it just gave the team a calming sense of Sergio Busquets has the ball. We can do what we have to do without risking a small touch being a turnover and then having to run back in transition. I think Busquets on the back line, orchestrating not from the midfield, but from the back line, allows us to be so much better in the build out, so much better at controlling possession and thus controlling the game and allowing our midfielders to do what they do. I think that was the biggest change. And you saw the possession numbers in the first half. We had less than 50%. In the second half, we were up closer to 60%. It was a huge change. And I thought in my head, that was the biggest difference. And you don't necessarily want to leave Busquets out there defensively on an island. But if you replace him in the midfield with Yannick Bright, I think you actually make your team better defensively and better with the ball. I really like this setup that we've come to in the last couple of games, and I want to spend some more time on it. But is that sort of what you were seeing as well?
100%. You've actually nailed what you just said in terms of how we play with Busquets in that back line. Having that ball playing center back just changes the entire dynamic of that midfield as well. And he's a metronome in there, right? Whether it's in the midfield and whether it's in the back line. And I actually didn't think about your point about how in the midfield it's easy to take him out of the game, but in the back line, when he's a center back playing or when he's a midfielder playing from the back line, he's actually a lot more effective, and it's hard to press him or cut him out of the game, because if you do that, you can create. He's just press resistant, right? So if you have pressing triggers that don't necessarily work against Busquets, you can mess up your entire shape, and that's how the opposition gets affected when Sergio Busquets is playing as that center back role. So I completely agree with you in that position. And I think the fact that he can, I don't know how much we saw of that in this game, but the fact that he can pop a ball in from center back all the way up top to the front really helps in switches, really helps in alleviating some of the pressure that we might be feeling, and just get the ball rolling a lot more fluidly than when we have someone like Avilés or Christoph, because then it's like, okay, it's going through two different outlets to get to where it wants to be, whereas with Sergio Busquets, it just goes directly there. And yeah, that's a fantastic point. And I wonder if this actually is the solution until we get a proper center back or someone who can play from the back. This might be the solution against certain teams that don't necessarily have that level of pace. And this might just be the way to go forward. And it looks like Tata trusts that system and trusts Busquets to play that role, which I'm really impressed about him finding that role for Busquets, because at the start of the season, I wouldn't have expected that. You don't play your best midfielder in the center back position, right? Yeah. Or you do if you're Tata.
I will say, and just as a caveat to that, this game lost its shape in the midfield in the second half pretty significantly. The lines were pretty spread out. And so in that situation, Busquets is super effective. I'm interested to see when the midfield's a little tighter and the lines are a little tighter, how it would operate. But it was so promising that I really want to see it. Maybe we should hold off on the Busquets conversation for later. But let's turn it to Yannick Bright, who over the last couple of games has been really, really good in the midfield. And, we've talked about him for months. We rave about him. I love this player, and I love exactly what he does. He's always in the right position. I could just continue talking about him forever. But the difference between the first half and the second half was so stark. It was so obvious that the midfield defensively was so much stronger with Yannick Bright in it, and particularly at defending their most dangerous player, who we saw was Ajimang. Night and day in the second half. And you saw Ajimang was getting so frustrated because he felt like I should have had more opportunities. I should have more opportunities. And that's what resulted in the red card, was the frustration that Yannick Bright was always in his face, always making it difficult for him. I think he showed a level of physicality in this game that we maybe haven't seen a ton of yet. I was really, really impressed. And again, he comes in, he changes the game. That streak that we talk about of Inter Miami not giving up goals when Yannick Bright's on the field, that continues for another half. Changed the game, really.
Yeah, that stomp that we saw in the 92nd minute, when Ajimang actually should have been on that pitch for that free kick, because he's the most dangerous striker to actually get on the end of the ball. was all because he was frustrated by how Yannick Bright handled him throughout that second half. So that's a testament in itself to how well Yannick Bright was playing. I'm not going to add to the praise that you mentioned because I think we already talk about Yannick Bright too much in this podcast. Would love to do, as Anton mentioned last time, I'm going to probably start my own Yannick Bright podcast, a daily podcast for you guys. But what I think is, if this player develops his forward passing skills, and I'm not saying he doesn't have them, he just doesn't show them enough for Inter Miami. If he develops those skills, whew, he's going to be a phenomenal midfielder going forward into the future. And I think he has it in him. His passing is very simple, but it's effective. And if he finds that range, and if he finds those deadly line breaking passes, or if he can do them a little bit more often, I think he's a locked in starter for next season, for the playoffs, let alone next season, honestly.
How about next game, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Substitutions. Inter Miami makes the aggressive substitution at halftime. I thought it worked like a charm. We see Taylor come off in the 71st minute for Leo Alfonso, and then in the 90th minute, Ruiz and Frey come on. Julian Gressel and Benjamin Cremaschi come off. I will say, and I got to give Tata credit, I would have taken Cremaschi off in the 75th minute because he looked really tired. He was having a few turnovers, and David Ruiz was right there. Of course, Tata was right because Cremaschi gets the game winner. I was also a little surprised to see Ian Frey going into a back three to kill the game. I think Ryan Saylor may have been an equally good option, and then you don't have to risk getting Ian Frey, having played
Injured.
multiple times.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy that they feel Ian Frey's in a good spot there. He can do that. But Ryan Saylor, just a bigger body, better in the air, may have been the right choice. But I can't really complain because we got the result we wanted. Anything about those?
Yeah, I think this run that Inter Miami is on is as much a testament to how well the players have adapted to a life without Messi, and also how well Tata Martino has coached this team over the last 5 games. These results would not have been possible without Tata Martino. And he's actually made some really bold choices, some really good decisions throughout 90 minutes across these 5 games that have essentially been the difference between 1 point and 3 points. And hats off to him for that. I think we've been critical of Tata Martino when we needed to be, but this is potentially the best I've seen of him as a tactician. And dare I say, Tata Martino might actually be a really good tactician as well, because he's been adapting to games phenomenally. And I don't know where this was at the start of the season, but right now it just seems like the shackles are off and he's not afraid to make some tough decisions that have really worked in favor of this team.
Yeah, we talked about before this stretch happened, before everyone left for the Copa America, that Tata Martino was going to have a huge responsibility in these games, and he was either going to get a lot of credit or a lot of blame based on the results. And listen, we've won 4 games out of 4. We've played really good teams.
12 points, man. What did we say? 6 points? If we get 6 points, I'd be happy. We've got 12 points from these 4 games, and our stretch is coming to an end soonish, right? Against Toronto's potentially the last. So 12 out of 18, even if we lose the 2 next, hopefully not. But that's still phenomenal on this run. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel confidence going into Saturday night too, right? We can absolutely go out there and get that win. Maybe let's talk about that. Maybe not specifically the Cincinnati game, but lessons that we can learn moving forward. Julian Gressel is a right winger for this team. He was good. He got another goal contribution. But let's talk about that back line, right? The change we made in the second half. Busquets as a center back and Yannick Bright in the midfield. We talked about why it worked in this game, but it also feels like that's something you can just copy and paste moving forward, even when Messi and Suarez come back, and your team will be better for it. This feels like it has to be the way moving forward. That's what I think.
Isn't Avila suspended for the next game? So Busquets is
No, he's not.
Okay. Because I thought the commentator said something about him being suspended because of yellow card accumulations against
Gomez is, and so is Jordi Alba.
Okay, there you go. Those two. So that might Franco Negri might be playing the next game, obviously, but I would 100% just keep Sergio Busquets in that back line. Yannick Bright has to start. If he doesn't start, we're gonna struggle. So yeah, this is the blueprint, man. This is the blueprint going forward. If we want to grind out results against tough teams, this is the way to play.
But not even just Saturday night or tough team. Like when Messi and
Yeah,
Suarez come back, you just take out Gressel, you take out Campana, you put in Suarez and Gressel. I'm
yeah.
sorry, Suarez and Messi. You can still play the same formation in the back half, and I do think you'll be better defensively. You will hold possession better, and I don't think you're sacrificing anything by putting Busquets deeper, by like defensively. You actually become stronger if you replace him in the midfield with Yannick Bright, and then just add an extra 2 goals a game from Messi and Suarez, and you are going to be cooking. It feels like we could get a really exciting Inter Miami experience in the next month when Messi and Suarez do come back. If Tata, he's clearly learned the lesson of Yannick Bright in the midfield, Sergio Busquets on the back line for this set of games, but can he and will he continue to employ that once, the big stars come back? That'll be really interesting. Julian Gressel also turning himself into a problem. So many goals, so many goal contributions, rather. But maybe we'll talk about him a little bit later. For the record, Rojas, I absolutely expect to be in or available on Saturday night against Cincinnati. It wouldn't shock me if he starts on the left wing, but maybe he comes off the bench. I don't think there's anywhere else for him to start in this team because you got to feel good about where you're at defensively in the midfield. You got to feel good about Julian Gressel playing on the right wing. So, it feels like there's a real chance Rojas is on the bench for a little bit.
I'm not too sure actually, because I think what Tata Martino is going for, he might put Gressel back into the midfield. If Redondo is not available, that's a different story. Then if Redondo is not available, then Gressel might go into the midfield. Rojas might plug in. But if he is, I fully expect a Redondo Gomez partnership, and then perhaps keep Gressel on the right wing side and Rojas on the left wing side. But I won't be surprised. And I'm going to make a prediction that I hope I'm wrong about. But when Lionel Messi and Suarez come back, I expect this team to struggle for a couple of games. I'm not saying we're going to lose those games, but I think in terms of finding the best formation for us, we're going to struggle a little bit to try and get the best team out there, because Tata Martino knows how to play without Messi, but with Messi, he's still struggling to have that adaptability. So that's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Anything else from this game? I know it's a little bit early, but the game was so dramatically changed by that one move or that one, switch, that covering that felt like it covered basically the entire first and second half of this game, and why we were successful in the second and not so much in the first.
And it's the
anything else
changes,
about this game,
right? No. I think we're ready to go into the award season.
Okay, Saur is traveling, and so we're trying to keep this a little bit shorter of an episode. So we're gonna go a little early to awards, and as always, we do 6 awards on this show. 1 man of the match for Inter Miami, 1 Heron that flew north, 2 individual awards each. And because I went first last time, Saur, it is your opportunity to give out the man of the match. Who's it going to?
I'll be honest, this was a little bit of a difficult decision in the sense that nobody played particularly outstanding football for me to say, yes, he's my man of the match. But I think based on the contributions for goals and contributions in moments, has to be Benjamin Kromaski. Has to be Benjamin Kromaski, right?
Maybe not who I would have gone with, but I think it's fair. It's funny because between like the 65th and 75th minute, I was thinking, man, he's got some turnovers in him. He's really struggling to hold the ball. He looks gassed, like he looked tired. And then, of course, he's always making those last runs. At the end, he does get the beautiful finish on a great pass from Julian Gressel. And he gets the winner, man. Hard to argue with a winner getting the man of the match. So I'm absolutely
and
cool with it.
Not just the winner. He had a role to play in the first goal as well, because he had the hockey assist. That was a really good ball into Jordi Alba. One thing about Benjamin Kromaski that you cannot fault is his effort, but he also does these really weird technical things at times where I'm like, I don't expect him to do that, but he still manages to pull those things off. Yeah, I love Benna. He's a great player. Um, I saw your tweet about him being rested soon because he has been playing a lot of games. I agree with that. I think he's a little bit run into the ground like Gressel was earlier in the season, so he may deserve a good rest. But I think he stood out with the two contributions that he had in some form or another, and that's the asset that this player is. Right, you can't count him out even when it's the 90th minute and Leo Alfonso's running, and he's trying to keep up with Leo Alfonso but is not able to. It's just the effort is always there, and you've got to love a player when they hustle.
Yeah, I had an award for him, and it was called the Gressel Day Spa because I think he needs to just, he's been solid, but I think he would do a really good if he got a 60-minute break on Saturday night, and then he came on, was able to impact the game from the bench because we saw what wonders that did for Julian Gressel, and I think Kremetzky should go to that same day spa. Okay, the heron that flew north, and I'm suddenly realizing I didn't think about this at all. So let me go to the list of players that played. And for those that don't know, the heron that flew north is our award for the player that was doing the wrong thing. Herons don't fly north for the winter. At least Florida herons don't. So if you're doing that, you're doing the wrong thing. And I'm giving it to Toto Aviles because
I have
no,
such a good award for him.
I'm
Yeah,
changing
there
it.
you
I'm
go.
changing it. I'm giving it to
Okay,
Sergei
good.
Christoph.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Christoph gives up the goal. Or I think he's more responsible than Aviles for the goal we allowed. He gets a yellow card, and that forces him to come off at halftime. I actually think Tata may have taken Aviles off at halftime instead of Christoph if Christoph hadn't got the yellow card. But still, not a great game. He was exposed. The back line was exposed, and he didn't get a second half to make up for it. So I'm giving it to Sergei Christoph.
Yeah, I agree with that. A, because I have an award for Toto Aviles. B, because Sergei Christoph not the best when you're taken off at 45 minutes, but I don't know if it was necessarily his fault. It was a tough outing for our centre back partnership, but the difference between him and Sergio Busquets, who's necessarily I love to see a foot race between Sergio Busquets and Christoph to see who's faster because that'd be hilarious to watch.
I don't think you want to see that.
But obviously, there were contingencies to Sergio Busquets in the centre back position with Yannick Bright in front of him. But still, Sergei Christoph is a centre back out and out. And right now, we're at a position of talking about putting our best midfielder in the centre back position, which essentially means Christoph's going to go to the bench. Once Ian Frey moves into that position or moves back into that position, I would say Christoph's probably our fourth choice centre back. And yeah, that's a conversation that we need to have. But he needs to step up if he wants to keep his spot on this team because it's not looking good.
Well, in his defense, he also got to play the half that didn't have Yannick Bright on the field.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That does make a difference. But he gets he gets the heron that flew north. Tell me who is your first award for last night's game.
Okay, so there's so many players we want to talk about.
Sorry. Tell me what the award is.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the Metamorphosis Award.
I think that's Sergio Busquets.
Yeah,
because he metamorphosized from a midfielder to a center back like it was easy peasy.
I was gonna go for the Caterpillar to the Butterfly Award because it feels like Sergio Busquets has absolutely fit the role of centre back like a glove. It might actually be the key for us winning everything, man. I'll be honest, it just looks so good. I was understating it when we were talking it earlier because I wanted to talk about this during the awards. But I need to get your thoughts on this. If we're playing a final against, let's say, the best team in the MLS right now, apart from Inter Miami, that is Cincinnati, which is going to happen next week. But if it's the final of the MLS, right, where it's all or nothing, do you trust Sergio Busquets to play that position? With obviously Yannick Bright in front of him.
I think he's the best center back on the team. I put him over Aviles and Christoph and Frede and Kamal Miller and Adelson Malanda or whoever we were playing. Like, Busquets is
Guys,
awesome back there.
please don't clip this up and put it up on YouTube because that's just gonna be so funny. But I can't believe we're having this conversation. We
It's true though.
are.
It's
Oh
true.
man, yeah,
He's so
yeah.
good. And the added factor that you can then put Yannick Bright in that 6 spot, it just transforms your back line. You're so much better at playing out of the back. Everyone back there has an outlet they can get to, which gives them the confidence to feel like if we have the opportunity, we can push forward. But if we don't, we can just always go back to Busquets. And then, of course, putting Bright as a 6 makes the entire defense more sturdy, can take out the opponent's best player because Yannick Bright just seemingly does that. This is what I was saying. This is what I was saying a few minutes ago. I think we might be in for a really exciting time in Inter Miami when you put in Lionel Messi in for Julian Gressel. Keep the midfield as is with Yannick Bright, with Gomez or Kramaski or Redondo, right? Two of those 3 or 4 players. Put Busquets on the back line with Kristoff, with Aviles, depending on how fast the other team is in transition. And then Ian Frey on the right side, getting forward, Jordi Alba on the left side, bombing forward. Those two getting way high up the pitch, feeling like you can do that because Yannick Bright can cover for them. Dude, it's going to get really exciting if we can actually keep all those players healthy. Okay.
Forget Yannick Bright, right? Forget Yannick Bright.
I can't.
The eye test. This game, in the second half, there were moments where I was like, okay, Busquets is one-on-one with Ajamang or Abada, I think is their winger.
Yeah.
And he was winning. He was winning his duels. And I just saw, I did a search about his ground duels. Sergei Kristov had 3 ground duels, of which he only won 1. Sergio Busquets had 8 ground duels, and he won 5 of those 8 ground duels. It's not just the fact that he has Yannick Bright in front of him. He's so intelligent as a footballer that he's able to just outwit you, and he knows where you're going to go. So even if he's slow, he just has that understanding of where the opposition is trying to go, or what they're trying to do, and he just shuts down everything. And it was really fascinating to watch some of those ground duels because you'd expect he's not that physical per se, right? Of course, he's tall and I'm sure he's strong as well. But if you compare him to Ajamang, I would say Ajamang would take him in a wrestling match. And yet he was undeterred when they were going one-on-one, which is great to see because it's not like he's shy in being in that position. So it might not just be Yannick Bright in front of him. He might just be made for this role, and hence the metamorphosis. He's finally found his final form. I don't know what Pep Guardiola was thinking, putting him in the midfield. He should have played centre back all of his, all of his Barcelona days.
Yeah,
there you go. Thank you, Rasa.
You make a good point. And he's also very cheeky when it comes to if he's at risk of actually losing the ball. He knows how to get a foul called so that he doesn't actually turn the ball over in a bad spot. He actually does recover better than you would imagine. He doesn't look like he's moving fast, but he covers ground pretty well because of the long legs. I don't think the Yannick Bright part of it isn't like, I think it's relevant because when you put him on the field, you're not getting bombarded with transition speed, which probably is the thing you'd be most worried about with Busquets as a center back. Those super quick, athletic, pacey players running straight at him. We haven't seen it a ton. So I do think Yannick Bright's part of that. But yeah, dude, he's been awesome. He is awesome. I think we found his best role. We've talked about him as a 6 or pushing him higher up the field. And as a center back, I think this is his best role. And he can handle the defensive duties, and then he's game-changing with the ball at his feet. So absolutely great award.
Yep. Your turn.
I'm going to give the Red Eye to Cincy award. Cincy as in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, the Red Eye to Cincinnati award. So this is obviously Julian Gressel, right? Has to be.
Where did you get Julian Gressel from that?
So you know what Red Eyes reminds me of? Homelander from The Boys. If anyone hasn't seen it, I would highly recommend you to check it out. He's got these powers where he can shoot lasers out of his eyes. Right now, Julian Gressel is locked in. He is in hot form to the point that he can burn Cincinnati with just his eyes. And I think that's why Red Eyes to Cincinnati goes to Julian Gressel.
That was beautiful in the most wrong way possible. No, it goes to Yannick Bright. The red eye, the last plane out. Get that man from the locker room on the red eye to Cincinnati and make him be there in the starting lineup from minute one because we need him against Lucho Acosta. He can shut down an opponent's best player. He's so good in transition, which is what Cincinnati likes to do. He is going to be key, crucial, super important. Any other words you want to use to our opportunity to go get 3 points in Cincinnati, who, by the way, is not a phenomenal home team. Send that man to Cincinnati, get him in the starting lineup, and don't let him screw up anything or get injured in the next 3 days. Just get him there and get him ready.
We might as well call us the Yannick Bright dialogue by now because we spend a lot of time talking about him, which I love. I don't mind at all. But you nailed it. This team does not win against Cincinnati without Yannick Bright on the pitch. Mark my words. And now watch Inter Miami go out and beat Cincinnati without Yannick Bright. But yeah, he's a phenomenal asset to this team. I can't believe he's a rookie and he's the only number 6 that we have. And he's stepping up every single time he's on that pitch. He's doing the job every single time he's on that pitch. I think the one thing where he might be lacking is his distribution, which I think is nitpicking it because he's not shown that he's bad at distribution by any means. But he's just that good, man. And I saw Tata Martino applauding something he did during the game on the sidelines, and it just seems like Tata Martino's on board the Yannick Bright train along with us. So bring him to Cincy because otherwise we aren't winning that game.
I almost gave the Talent Scout Award for that, but then I realized we get the Talent Scout Award because we nailed that one. Yeah, dude. And this is so outlandish to say, and I understand that. But he could absolutely transform what Inter Miami is because of the role he plays. If Busquets actually goes to the back line on a long-term basis and transforms our ability to play out of the back and gives our fullbacks the ability to play way higher up the pitch, he can unlock all of those things if he is and continues to be what we've seen so far. So yes, we praise him a lot, but I feel like it's deserved because he could unlock so much. And if you just throw Lionel Messi up there at the right wing and Luis Suarez at the center, at center forward, this team is going to be amazing. And I'm really
I don't
excited.
think Sergio Busquets needs to move into the centre back position for Yannick Bright to start. Imagine a midfield of Yannick Bright and Sergio Busquets. Like I think they're the two best midfielders we have right now. Period.
Most impactful, I think.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but also if you do put Busquets in the back line, then all of a sudden your center backs are incredible at playing out of the back, and you are defensively so strong and stout that your fullbacks will be able to be more impactful going forward. Anyways, give me your second award as we continue through.
Okay, I'm going to go with the Chinese Puzzle Box Award.
I'm thinking about that, like the Chinese thing where you put your fingers together and then they get stuck if you pull too fast. So you have to like slowly take them off. A Chinese puzzle box. Nothing's coming to mind for that. You're going to have to explain that one to me. But I'm not afraid to guess randomly, and I will. I'm giving it to Drake Callender because Drake Callender is found his Zen in a way. I don't know if Zen is Chinese, but has found his Zen in a way that allows him to stop everything that comes at him. He's been Captain Drake, and he's been phenomenal. Save me here.
That is incorrect in every possible sense of that award. You did say, I mean, you were bang on about Captain Drake, but the Chinese puzzle box is a very confusing piece of contraption, right? You have to really solve that puzzle to get into the depths of what's inside that box. At this point in time, the same level of confusion I face when I try to solve a Chinese puzzle box is what I face when I'm watching Toto Aviles play football. He is confusing me to extents that I've not been confused before. He does certain things in the pitch where I'm like, okay, he's playing really well. He had a really good tackle in that first half where he recovered the ball and then tried to progress it forward. And in the very next action that he did, he gave the ball away and invited pressure on us again. Has a silly foul against Ajimang, gets the yellow, which puts him again on the yellow card list and accumulation list. Thankfully, he doesn't miss the game against Cincinnati. And then is slightly culpable for that goal, the first goal that Charlotte scored. So it's just I'm so confused by him right now. I don't know what to feel about Total Haveles. Do I give him a little bit of respite? Do I criticize him? Do I, he's still young, he's still 19, he's still learning, but it's I don't know what to think about him. So I'd love for you to try and fill those gaps in for me.
He's a young player and he's lacks discipline, and he needs to continue improving. I mean, you can see the tools. When he's under no pressure, he's a fine passer. He's big, he's athletic, he's fast. He can make those like last man saving tackles that really excite you. And he had one today or last night against Kerwin Vargas in the first half, I think, where he just like slid at the right time, got the ball, didn't just kick it out of bounds, but one possession, and it was beautiful. But this is a guy that has only played 50 games as a professional, and he needs to like continue working things out. But sometimes you get frustrated the lack of discipline, like mentally. And he got a yellow card today, which I didn't think was actually a foul. I actually thought it was a foul on Ajimang. Like, I think he got unlucky that the ref didn't exactly see what happened, because Ajimang, I think, pulls him down. But it's neither here nor there. I agree with you, man. He's going to continue to get better as he plays game in and game out. And, he's going to be better after 100 starts than he is after 50. But certainly we've seen Diego Gomez take that next step. And he's going to be on the road to Europe soon. Toto Aviles, I'm sure, has the same exact goals and ambitions, but we haven't seen him take that like next step to being like a really dominant player. So yeah, I just think it's time and experience, and hopefully he has the right attitude to be in practice learning from it.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, take us home with the last award.
Okay. I came up with this as you were giving that last award, so I apologize. It's not that creative, but I'm giving the it's the same, but it's not the same award.
Has to be Julian Gressel, right? This time it has to be Julian Gressel, please. I want to give him an award. Make it Julian Gressel.
Where do you get Julian Gressel from that?
Because he's the same player. He's doing the same things, but it's not the same player. He's doing the same things but differently, and that's why this award goes to Julian Gressel, because he's finally starting to have an impact with on this team with the kind of stuff that he normally does in other teams. So it's the same, but it's not the same.
I mean, that checks out. I think everything you just said could work. It's not the answer, but it could work. It goes to Cello Wiegand, who makes his return. We haven't seen him in a couple of weeks because he wasn't available for the last two games, and then there was like a 10-day break. He comes back into the starting lineup for Ian Frey, and he plays the same position, but it's not the same. Ian Frey's better, and he has to be the right back. And so Cello was fine. He didn't screw up. He didn't turn the ball over in bad spots. He wasn't bad defensively. But the difference between him and Ian Frey is like big and real. And Ian Frey has to go back into the starting lineup whenever he's available to start, and the medical staff clears him to start. And I'm happy we have Cello because he's a sturdy, solid MLS right back, similar to how I feel about Franco Negri on the left side. But he's not a difference maker, and Ian Frey can be a difference maker. And so, Cello, thank you for providing us with 90 minutes, and thank you for being a part of this team. But when we play the big games, it's got to be Ian Frey, and you are going to make sure Ian Frey doesn't tear his ACL again, because that's got to be your role. It's the same, but it's not really the same.
Yeah, I get it. I think Wiegand had a good game. I don't think he was bad by any means. It was decent.
He wasn't.
Yeah,
he wasn't.
And he had some good actions. He got into the final third, had a few good balls in, but I get it. He's just not the same level of ball carrier. It's just that extra bit missing that Ian Frey brings to the table. So I completely get your point. And 100%, I think Ian Frey, who's a centre back, is a better right back than our main right back, which is saying something. And the ceiling is insane for Ian Frey. So I agree with you. In the bigger games when it's needed the most, I would put in Ian Frey and have that level of extra X factor that Chelo Wigan maybe lacks or hasn't been able to unlock. But yeah, that's a good award. That's a good award.
And I think X factor is the right word. Cello is fine. He's a good, solid MLS player, right back, but he just doesn't have that X factor. And, my to-do list for Saturday night, if I'm Tata Martino, start Yannick Bright, start Ian Frey, start Busquets as a center back, win the game. Easy peasy. There's a lot of players that deserve to be talked about that we haven't yet. Jordi Alba had a really good game. He's who I would have given the man of the match to. He doesn't get back on the one goal that they scored. He was close, but he gets the assist on the first goal. He sets up the second goal. He gets the hockey assist going to Julian Gressel. In that second half, when the game and the lines were getting really spread out, he was cutting into the midfield and was really effective there. I liked what Jordi Alba did in this game.
And it seems like he's gotten back into his groove. He's been really good the last few games, and it just seems like everything's clicking in place for him again. I'm not saying he was bad in any of the games by any means, but it just seemed like he wasn't having that level of impact going into games. And now it just seems like he's back on dominating that left side and making sure that we're doing well. And maybe that's also to do with having someone like Yannick Bright in the middle to allow him to express himself more freely. But yeah, I agree with you. He had a really good game. Drake Callender had a really good game. I thought he was a really good shout.
Before we go on, I do have to say this about Jordi Alba. Maybe if I had to give out the man of the match, I wouldn't have given it to him because he did miss a wide open, a really good shot.
Yeah.
He had a few bad crosses in the first half and but one bad one in the second half. So he did have his faults, but he was there and impactful when we needed it to, and when we needed him to. And so, yeah, Drake Callender also good, huge save in the first half. You were saying.
And I like the fact that he's now really commanding his box, and that maybe I didn't notice the last few, maybe I didn't notice throughout the season, but it just seems like it's a little bit more commanding the way he comes out and collects some of the crosses and collects some of the balls coming in, because I didn't think he had that in him. I thought he was a little bit more tentative and liked to stay on his line, but it just seems like he's commanding the box really well, really getting into the Captain Drake moniker. So good for him for that. I would potentially have placed him as one of the man of the match as well.
Diego Gomez, I thought taking steps in the right direction. I thought he was a little imprecise with his passes in his first game on Saturday, but I thought he had a few really nice forward balls and was getting interceptions and doing what he does pesky wise. Robert Taylor gets a goal.
Much needed.
Otherwise kind of quiet. He hasn't scored since that Vancouver game, but he gets on the scoreboard and it's an impactful and important goal. Julian Gressel, who maybe we should have given an award to, probably deserving of an award. 5 goal contributions in 5 games. He's been really, really good.
I had an award for him and I called it the sketch artist because that assist, as soon as I saw him take that little bit of a shuffle before he puts the ball in, I knew this was going to be bang on spot, and I was hoping someone was in there to convert it because that was a peach of a ball. It felt like it was drawn by hand with the way it actually floated past everyone and landed right where Benjamin Kromaski was. Beautiful. But you give him space and he does that, man. And in games where he is going to get space, he's a right winger for me now. He's not a central midfielder. But he's stepped up big time. And having him produce those passes to get us those goals has been phenomenal. Phenomenal for this team.
Yeah, I love what he's doing. He's been exactly the player that we imagined he could be at his best. That's what he's been for the last couple of games. And, 5 goal contributions, but also he's creating a lot. Like it's not just the 5 goal contributions. He's creating a lot of our offense. And this game, maybe that wasn't quite as noticeable. He did create. I thought in the first 30 minutes, he was the most creative player we had. And then obviously he gets the assist at the end. But over the past couple of games, he's at times been our only creative option and the most creative option in terms of creating opportunities. So kudos to him. And then the last player, Leo Campana, who we haven't talked about much, but was getting a lot of criticism, hasn't scored in a couple games. Any thoughts on Leo Campana?
Yeah, I think Leo Campana has not necessarily had the best games these last.
For the record,
Yep.
For the record, Saur's headphones just died, so he had to go to his computer. So that's why his he sounds much different now. Go ahead.
Sorry about that, guys. As I was saying about Leo Campana before you rudely interrupted me, was he hasn't been performing that great, of course, and it seems like sometimes in games he gets lost. But he's still, I still think he's fine. It's not like he hasn't scored in a couple of games, but the team hasn't been suffering because of it. He still comes back, defends, does a lot of the dirty work in terms of pressing, and he's trying, and the goal's going to come. It's going to come, and he's still young, guys. So it's not like he's still learning on a lot of things. But yeah, I agree with the fact that since he's our leading man right now, he needs to score goals from time to time. And it's been, 3 games since he hasn't scored, which isn't necessarily that bad. But given how prolific Luis Suarez has been for this team, we shouldn't be expecting Campana to score game in, game out.
Keep talking because I'm looking up something about Campana.
I have nothing more to say about Campana other than that I will not support any slander if anyone comes to me and says we need to sell him this season, because he needs to be there for that playoff run.
Okay, I just looked it up. Patrick Agimong scores 1 goal every 237 minutes. Leo Campana scores more than a goal every 200 minutes. So we saw how impactful Agimong can be. Leo Campana scores more goals than that. And as far as him being a DP, it is sort of a misnomer. Campana gets paid less than Christoph. The only reason he's a DP is because of the transfer fee, and it's only like that because Inter Miami needed him to be a DP to activate the U22s. Like, he's not being paid like Luis Suarez or those guys. So it is a little bit of a misnomer. Anyways, anything else from this game? I feel like we covered a lot, and I know that you have, a world to go save out there. So I won't keep you too long, and I appreciate you giving us this time.
No, thank you so much for being considerate about the time. I'm glad I was able to join today, guys. I was sorry to miss out on the last podcast, but I hope you guys enjoyed our analysis. And it turns out we were right about Charlotte all along. We were going to beat them. I had got it 3-1, so missed out by 1 goal. But that 7-2 scoreline is coming soon, and what better way to score 7 goals than against Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, I will say the USMNT really screwed us over because Miles Robinson was just sitting on the bench there for Copa America, and then they got eliminated, and now he's back, and that's going to help them defensively. And I was looking forward to facing them without him. I do want to retroactively change my final award from "It's the Same, but It's Not the Same" to the Animal Kingdom Award, because I think there are cats, and then there are like real cats that have X factor. So same sort of logic, and I thought you might appreciate that. Anyways, guys, we will be back Saturday right before the game, an hour before kickoff, for our pregame show, as we always do, and then the postgame show on Sunday, and so on and so forth. But we appreciate you guys being in the chat. We appreciate you guys watching. I will give you this heads up for those watching live. Argentina plays in about an hour and a half in their Copa America quarterfinal game, and then about an hour and a half later, again, I recommend this, or an hour and 40 minutes later, just as the Argentina game's ending, LAFC and the LA Galaxy are playing 4th of July, 100,000 people at the Rose Bowl, or 90,000 people at the Rose Bowl. Going to be a really fun game with a really exciting atmosphere. So if you are interested in watching another MLS game tonight, that is one to check out. I think it starts at 10:30 Eastern, 10:40 Eastern. So worth checking out. But yeah, we'll be back on Saturday. And guys, thanks again. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day. And happy 4th of July.